So what we wanted to do today was to introduce everyone to what these different tinctures are, what's in them, and why they seem to be such a good match for the four styles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's a good segue to the next one. Like for me, I one of my favorite meditation style practices I learned from I think it was from Sam Harris, not directly, but through his app, right? But it was just the aspect of meta meditation, and I know that your practice goes a little bit beyond meta; it's a little bit deeper than that. But just the aspect of focusing on the heart and focusing on wellness and well-being and compassion. I think that was really, really powerful for me. I always had such a mental focus or at least trying to move away from a mental focus when working with meditation. But to have one that's more about compassion and rooted in your heart and rooted in emotional well-being and empathy for other people has been probably one of the strongest, most impactful meditation practices that I've ever had, especially in other visionary states as well. That I find that similarity.
It's interesting that you bring that up because one of the things we've kind of noticed is that more of, what we call the open heart style, right? This kind of connecting to a positive emotional state and, really supporting that and using that to connect to others and to connect to the rest of the world. It tends to be a more advanced practice for a lot of people. It's one of these things that seems like, and even a lot of traditions, they don't start with that. They start with
Mm.
more focus and mindfulness and then introduce more of the compassion, loving kindness type practices down the road. And, it is, and especially in our day and age, right, where people can be very focused on their self. And, to really develop this ability to take perspectives, to have empathy, to open your heart is really important. And so this one I'm really curious about, right? Because, and for me, not being a mushroom herbal expert, I know enough that I can go, yeah, I can see where certain things would support focus. Okay, that seems like a kind of a low hanging fruit. But it's like, well, what do you do? What supports emotional wellness, right? Like what do you got for that? And how does that work? And of course, you have a blend that we're going to call open heart. And so I'm really curious, tell me what's in there and why this might be helpful.
Well, the open heart blend, is something that that's one of the more new blends that we have because we needed it. People need emotional support. People need, more importantly, people, not more importantly, but equally as important, people need cardiovascular support. So it's interesting, when you're focusing on the heart, it's almost, you have the metaphysical, experiential, emotional support, and then you have the actual cardiovascular system support, circulatory support. And of course, with these medicinals that we work with, they do both. Of course they do, because the heart is, the effect of that is the emotional support. But, we have things like, so in this blend, reishi is the primary mushroom, and reishi is a mushroom of the heart. It's a mushroom that actually looks like a heart.
Hmm.
There's this element called the doctrine of signatures, which goes back into ancient medicine. It looks at, like, if you actually can look at something, it can give you a little bit of a clue as far as what it does. And it's of course not an exact science, but it's really beautiful to find these reishi conchs out in nature that actually have this beautiful heart shape. And that's one of the things that they do. It's very soothing, and it's actually very helpful for heart circulation and heart support, and lowering things like LDL cholesterol and things like that. These markers that are, negative markers for cardiovascular wellness. And with, or with chronic health, being so in the forefront of modern health, cardiovascular wellness is crucial. And that's why exercise is so important. But, for this blend, it comes with actually it's actually an elegant kind of love potion that actually affects the heart in a systematic way as well. So it's got beauty in it, which makes sense. Like rose is highlighted right next to reishi, and that just tastes good, And rose isn't the deepest impactful herb on the heart, but it is. It's helpful. And it also tastes amazing. So like the experience of what you're actually taking informs the body as well. And that's one of the reasons why we focus on taste so much within our tincture production. Um, But then you have Hawthorn Berry, and Hawthorn Berry is one that you can actually feel. And what was wild to me was, after experimenting with this blend, feeling the heart circulation increase because of Hawthorn Berry, like a really strong Hawthorn Berry extract. And that's been known to be helpful for cardiovascular support as well. And then paired with something like Damiana, which is, a light aphrodisiac, mildly stimulating effects that also helps with circulation and really helps with like embodiment and feeling good. In addition to Yarrow, and Yarrow just kind of has that overall, it's a local indigenous herb, but more of like a system harmonizer for that entire blend. And so in addition to it being a circulatory stimulant, it's also something that is good for things like depression and things like helping open the heart for a greater empathic response, helping, in addition to that, helping soothe so that you can actually really ground down a little bit more in your body.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's interesting because, one of the things that we recommend open heart practices for, and it's going to sound obvious, but, are for people who have struggled with depression or mood concerns. And, and it's kind of the way that the neuromeditation program works, right? Is that it's like, well, what is the counterbalance? And so if you struggle with mood, being in a negative mood, resentment, anger, depression, well, what's the counterbalance? Well, the counterbalance is learning how to feel gratitude and appreciation and compassion and empathy. And so, again, having this support, I think, is really helpful because sometimes those are difficult emotions to be able to tap into. And so especially if we get stuck in those patterns, of anger or depression or whatever. So having some support, something that will sort of encourage or facilitate that type of expression, I think is going to be really powerful and important.